The American Foursquare was an adaptation of the Victorian house so popular with the middle class earlier in the 19th century. Exterior variations, of course, are very common, including towers from the Queen Anne style, stucco finishes, and parapet walls from the Spanish colonial style. We'll see pediments from colonial revival buildings and very often exposed rafter ends reminiscent of craftsman-style homes. Now, porches are going to be very common with the roof supported by posts or simple columns. Now, the interesting thing about the American Foursquare, it's going to be this big, blocky, square, almost cubic form. And it really reflects a shift away from the Victorian. Now, as a servantless middle-class family develops, the American Foursquare takes the place of these rambling Victorian houses, which were often designed with separate quarters and even stairs for servants. The Foursquare was sometimes called the Prairie Box, as it shared many of the features of that style, including an open floor plan and family-friendly kitchen with built-in cabinets and closets, obviously closets throughout the house. Now, what you're going to see in terms of characteristics, often a hipped roof, a box shape, at least the basic form is a box shape, a large front porch, although here we see a mix of forms. We have that undulation that kind of screams out a little bit of maybe Art Nouveau sneaking in. Here we have Greek columns, Ionic columns being used. Kind of interesting. Those might be composite. I can't quite see the detail. Along with the pilasters that give a very classical revival feel to the house. So there you're mixing the different styles along with the exposed rafters, which are more craftsman-like. We see large windows, usually incorporating prairie-style ideas, oftentimes 2, sometimes 2.5 stories, with an efficient layout. And these are mail order pieces, so you could order this in the Sears catalog. The layout on the inside is usually fairly straightforward. Sometimes it's called a Foursquare because that's the basic layout, as if you drew out a square on the lower and upper stories. And what we see is the entryway into a parlor. That's a formal room. Today we would call that the living room. Usually there's going to be a large dining room, although that can vary quite a bit. The hall is just sort of a catch-all area. Again, built-in closets there, built-in cupboards, which are going to be a big shift. The kitchen is going to be very family-friendly. You no longer need to have a furniture piece to hold up your dishware. That's all built in. And that's really a change. Even the early Victorian homes frequently didn't have built-in cabinetry in the kitchen, but we're going to see that in this period of eccentric design. So we have the use of closets. We have the use of a single bathroom. Now today, obviously, you would want a bathroom in a couple of different places, but the use of an indoor bathroom is going to be unique and interesting. If you have an old enough Victorian, it doesn't even have a bathroom or didn't have one at one time. We have the large closets for the bedrooms. This is going to be the start of the death knell for things like armoires and dressers. Today, most of that is built in. And we see the use of 4 bedrooms. So it's a fairly common house, or at least what we would think of today as a fairly common house. The interiors tend to be very comfortable, very quaint. They will borrow from, again, numerous styles. So we have a crown molding here, for example, and then we have an embossed ceiling, something we might see from the Victorians. And this is probably either plasterwork or paper mache that's been applied to the surface. The woodwork is left natural, very arts and crafts, although obviously this is a later example that I'm borrowing from, since this is a mid-century modern table and chair. When you have exposed surfaces such as brick, they will be left exposed in most of these houses. Now today, a lot of this is removed and they've drywalled the whole thing. They've kind of sterilized it, but this gives you an idea of what it originally would have looked like and felt like in the space. Now, when you see them today, oftentimes you see these Foursquares with additions added onto them, sometimes worse than others. Here, a giant garage and living space, which is actually almost larger than the house. Please don't ever do that to someone. Life is too short to live in an ugly house. But you see the addition, which kind of hides the fact that we're dealing with a Foursquare. Here, we're dealing with a Foursquare, and I would argue that one of these two elements, either the front or the back, is original to the piece. I'm betting that the back is actually original to the piece. This is our typical Foursquare, and this is our addition. And you see how it's kind of extended back, but it doesn't quite fit. It does have the arts and crafts elements applied to it, though. The use of wood shingle, at least in parts of it, the use of the tapered wood column, which we see in our Foursquare up here, along with, in this case, a brick element underneath the column, or is the lower part of the column. And here, that shingle work is painted, which there's an arts and crafts person who's just crying over that right now. But the use of the undulation makes it more natural, more organic, makes you forget what you're looking at. Today, we would call that whimsical. But you get the idea. This is your classical house, and it's a sort of thing that you would see in just about any town in the United States today.